Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Hub Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Berger, Director of Marketing for Better Good. And today I am chatting with Angel Radford, Director of Volunteer Services for MUST Ministries in Georgia. In today's case study interview, we're going to learn more about MUST Ministries, talk about how they're managing volunteers, and learn how VolunteerHub has made a positive impact on their volunteer program. Hey, Angel, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I appreciate
happy
it.
to.
Yeah, I'm really excited to learn more about MUST Ministries and how VolunteerHub is helping your organization better manage volunteers. So before we dive into VolunteerHub related questions, I wanted to learn more about your organization and your role. So can you tell me a little bit about MUST Ministries, its mission, values, and goals?
Well, sure. So, MUST Ministries, our mission statement says that we exist to serve our neighbors in need. And we do that by kind of providing emergency and supportive housing programs, addressing food insecurity, clothing needs, and workforce development needs in our community.
And what is your role at MUST Ministries, and what does a typical day look like for you?
Sure. So I am the director of volunteer services for MUST. So I get to lead a team of volunteer coordinators. They're the ones that are doing sort of the day-to-day management of our volunteers. So I get to spend my days kind of training and equipping our team, developing recruiting strategies, stewarding those partner relationships that we have with corporate groups and church volunteer groups. But I also spend a fair amount of time in our volunteer database, kind of analyzing the volunteer data and understanding trends in volunteerism for our organization.
And I thought it was really impactful to see some of the metrics that you guys have achieved. So I wanted to mention some of those. So between July of 2022 and May of 2023, MUST Ministries provided 3,789,993 pounds of food, served 70,000 people, and impacted 4,647 people in their housing program. And in order to reach that level of impact, I know that volunteers play a critical component. So I wanted to ask, how many volunteers does MUST Ministries leverage each year?
Sure. So we kind of post-COVID, we average about 10,000 volunteers per year. We have seen since COVID a decline in recurring volunteers who are committed on a weekly basis, but we've seen a big increase in short-term volunteers or intermittent volunteers who want to have little bit more flexible schedule. But on average, over the course of a year, we could have 10,000 unique individuals that are coming to serve alongside our staff, which is only about 100 staff members. So we literally cannot do the work that we're doing if we do not have volunteers helping support those efforts to reach those 70,000 clients.
I know you guys offer a lot of services, so what kind of roles do volunteers fill?
Sure. So some of those volunteers that come in on a weekly basis, they're the ones that are interacting with our clients each week as they come into the food pantry or the clothing closet. If they're getting services at our housing shelter or serving a meal at our kitchen. And then some of those intermittent volunteers, they're coming in and doing maybe being a part of a monthly food distribution that we might do out in the community, maybe some of our seasonal programs or different special events. So for example, coming up in December, we've got our MUST Toy Shop, where our clients will be able to come in and shop for gifts that they want to be able to give to their families. All of those are free and donated new toys and items. But over the course of about 2.5 weeks, we'll probably have 600 volunteers that come in and help support that special event.
So it's pretty clear that volunteers play a critical role at MUST Ministries. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how you manage them. I understand that your organization previously used volunteers for Salesforce. What features or capabilities were lacking that prompted you to look for a new solution?
Sure. We used volunteers for Salesforce for about 5.5 years, I believe. And one of our challenges was that our volunteers could not access their own volunteer information or review their schedule, their different registrations, or cancel things for themselves. The only access was administrative access. And one of our big pain points with it was we were never able to track group volunteer reservations at the level that we really wanted to be able to track every individual who participated in a group. So we really wanted to improve our group management experience, but also have a way for our volunteers to engage with the system itself as well, so they could kind of self-manage some different things.
So there wasn't a volunteer user interface in Volunteers for Salesforce, it sounds like.
There was not. And so that was definitely one of our must-haves in a new system was we need our volunteers to be able to access their schedule and be able to self-cancel. We needed more of our staff members to be able to also access schedules and rosters. We wanted to improve the automated confirmations and reminders, as well as integrating the background check process that we use for our volunteers. Those were some of the things that we were like, this is what a new system needs to help us do better.
And so, kind of switching gears and talking about VolunteerHub, what prompted your organization to select VolunteerHub? Were there specific features that stood out to you when exploring solutions?
Well, I, as the director of volunteer services, started to do a little bit of secret shopping volunteering with some of our peer organizations who are very similar in size and scope of work that we do. And I wanted to kind of know and understand certain aspects of their volunteer experience. And one of the things, or two of the organizations that I did that with, were both using VolunteerHub. And I thought I was just very impressed with the look of it and how user-friendly it was. And I thought, when I'm ready to look at new systems, I need to come back and look at this one. So as a volunteer myself, I was very impressed with the user experience.
And can you kind of describe how you're using VolunteerHub? Like what features stand out?
Well, that user experience of the users being able to access all of that information themselves, being able to see their schedules, go in and change information as needed if they need to change an address. One of the reasons that we needed to move to a different system was a change in one of our internal policies, and that we wanted to start doing a background check on every adult volunteer. And you can imagine if you've got 10,000 volunteers a year, you need that to be as automated as possible. And the old system that we had, it could integrate the background check, but it was manually initiated. And it wasn't easy to prevent volunteers from signing up for new events if they hadn't been background checked. And so as we were implementing VolunteerHub, getting everybody through the same background check process, having it automated as to when they get renewed, and just having all of that very seamlessly integrated was a big component of moving and implementing this new system.
And I want to talk about one of the most important things to us, and that's your experience post implementing VolunteerHub. So can you speak to training, implementation, and ongoing support that you receive?
Sure. I think most people really dread the implementation of a major new system like this. Because anytime you're making a system-wide change, it's just painful. Change is hard, and people are going to complain about it. We knew that change is hard, and some people are kind of grumbling, but of course, everybody that interacts with the new system, they're like, wow, it looks so great. It's so much easier to find things. But from our team perspective, the implementation team at VolunteerHub, they have a really great process for kind of the training meetings that they do at the beginning to really help you get to think through, how do we set this system up for our organization? And they will do as many of those meetings as you need. And so we had such a great experience with the implementation team of just answering every question that we have and considering the way that our organization operates. But then even once we kind of were up and going and we would be running into different questions, the support site that you can go to and search and go, how do I do this? How do I do that? And there's such great documentation on, oh, okay, so I need to go to this feature, click this setting. The documentation is really excellent. But then if I still can't find it, or the thing that I'm trying to do is a little bit unique, we've had really great response with, submitting a support question. They're super responsive. I have never had a support question go in and it take more than like an hour or two to at least get a response of, hey, I'm working on this, but almost always it's an immediate response of, here's how we can do this. And then sometimes there's a back and forth of, well, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And we've just had such great interaction with the support team. And that makes all the difference.
I love to hear that you feel like you're being supported, because I agree with you. It makes all the difference. As far as ROI, can you talk a little bit about how you measure ROI for a solution like VolunteerHub?
Sure. Recruiting for volunteers post-COVID has been challenging for every organization out there. And one situation that we have a lot of different church groups that come to our kitchen and they serve meals once a month. And in most cases, we had one contact person for that group. And each month they would bring 5 to 8 different volunteers from their church to help them. It was really difficult for us to track the information for those individuals. So we really only had the information for the one group leader. So as we're implementing VolunteerHub and we're getting all of those different members to create their volunteer accounts, go through the background check and get in the system, we're realizing that, we might actually have had 30 volunteers who are all rotating over the year. So where we used to have one volunteer record, one person that we could recruit to from that group, we now have like 30. So if we have 50 groups that come on a regular basis, we go from having 50 contacts to like 1,500 contacts just for volunteers who are already showing up. But we weren't easily able to track all of those before. So now recruiting from this bigger pool of volunteers, it's going to help us adjust to those changes in volunteerism after COVID.
And what would you say to other nonprofits that aren't using a volunteer management solution like VolunteerHub? For example, they're nervous about kind of going through the process of moving away from, let's say, a manual process or another solution that doesn't quite provide the features they need.
With the size of our organization and the volume of volunteers, doing some sort of manual process or a process that really doesn't efficiently manage the volunteers, it's crippling. And you spend so much time and energy on things that you wouldn't have to. And so I would say to another organization that if your organization is dependent on volunteers to accomplish your mission, you need a user-friendly and efficient tool for managing those people and those events. Of the various platforms that I reviewed, VolunteerHub resolved our biggest pain points and was kind of at the right price point for our organization.
That's great to hear. And so before we wrap up, I want to make sure listeners know how they can get involved with MUST Ministries. So what is the process for someone in your community to see and sign up to volunteer?
Sure. So if they go to our website, which is mustministries.org, a volunteer can kind of click through our volunteer page to our VolunteerHub platform. And in 3 easy steps, they're ready to serve. They would create their volunteer profile, complete the background check, and then reserve a slot at their volunteer event to come help us serve our neighbors in need.
Great. So thank you so much, Angel, for sharing your insights, and definitely inspiring to hear the impact MUST Ministries is making and how Volunteer Hub is helping you better manage volunteers.
You are very welcome. I'm happy to do it. And we are super grateful for the work that you guys are doing that just help organizations like ours do more with our volunteers and with our staff. So we appreciate y'all as well.